So if you've ever watched an episode of Star Trek, really any of the series, whether the original series or all the way through to Voyager or Deep Space Nine, one of the things that happens frequently is that the doctor will whip out his or her medical tricorder, point it at someone who is ill and say,
"Her heart and lungs are seriously compromised and her kidneys are failing. The creature is also secreting some kind of paralyzing agent into her bloodstream."
No! Hold on. All of the systems in her body have elevated readings. Take her to sickbay.
And the idea that you could have a device that did that has intrigued us for a long time. And the biologic challenge is that you can almost do that for some organisms and some infections, but you can't do it for others. So let's actually take that and break it apart. The times when it works are situations where the organism that's infecting you is never, ever, ever normal in a human being. A good example of that would be tuberculosis. If I can detect the DNA or any other thing that reflects you having tuberculosis in your sputum, that's not normal. It should not ever be there in a healthy person. A healthy person should not have any kind of a biologic signal for TB in their sputum. And we actually have tools that are not quite as fast as the medical tricorder, but pretty close. You can get it down to an hour or two with tests like polymerase chain reaction or PCR. In Star Trek, when we're dealing with alien infections, you can pretty much assume that whatever causes
Terellian Death Syndrome
is not a normal thing in human beings, and thus the medical tricorder works. But the other side of it, the place where we can't reliably use that concept, at least not by itself, has to do with the vast majority of the much more common infections. And here we get into the fact that the common infections, things like urinary tract infection, to some extent community-acquired bacterial pneumonia, are due to organisms that are present on us all the time. And we call those organisms commensal organisms. They live with us, and indeed, it's a variation on the concept of the microbiome. If you've heard about the microbiome, everybody has bacteria that live on their skin, that live in their gut, and you need these bacteria. They're important to you. They're doing things like making vitamins. The presence of those bacteria confuses us when we need to make a diagnosis, because if those bacteria can live in your gut, or they can cause a urinary tract infection, well, I'm always going to detect them on you. And so if you've got a urinary tract infection, does detecting the organism mean it's causing the infection or not? And a particularly good example of this occurs with the pneumococcus, the organism called streptococcus pneumoniae, which causes community-acquired bacterial pneumonia. It's the most common cause of somebody who's otherwise healthy just developing pneumonia. Now, the thing about pneumococcal pneumonia, the causative organism, the pneumococcus, is that it's present in a third of the people walking down the street who are perfectly healthy. It's in a third of the noses of people walking down the street. No disease whatsoever in those folks, but it's living here. Can't tell. Could be in my nose right now. Might not. I can't tell because I can't feel it. It's not causing a pneumonia in me. But if I were to develop pneumonia and then you did a PCR test on me and you said, oh, you've got pneumococcus in your nose, what would that mean? Well, I might have it right now. I don't have pneumonia. If I develop a pneumonia, is it causing my pneumonia? And that's the problem that we have when we get into really the bulk of the really common infections, is that they're caused by these organisms, these commensal organisms that are with us all the time. And so the super sensitive and super rapid tests like PCR, the things that are as close to a medical tricorder as you can get, those tests detect the presence of the organism, but they don't tell you what it's doing. And that's the trick. If you want to decide if I have pneumococcal pneumonia, you have to take some sputum from me, look at it under the microscope, and see if you're seeing an excess of the pneumococcus in the sputum. That would tell you that that's probably what is causing the infection. But just detecting the organism is not enough. So that's the thing that makes the medical tricorder concept something that we can implement in part today. When you're looking for an organism that's not normal, tuberculosis, gonorrhea, and actually COVID these days, those are organisms that are not supposed to be on you, and something that is almost as fast as a medical tricorder as possible. But when you're thinking about a standard bacterial infection, urinary tract infections, community-acquired bacterial pneumonia. The biologic speed limit is that the organisms you're looking for are present in healthy people. And so mere detection is not enough. You actually have to augment that with something else to decide if the organism that you are detecting is actually the cause of the infection. And it's just not clear that there's a way you can fix that. You're going to have to add something onto the medical tricorder concept. There's been work done on that, things like looking for markers of infection due to particular organisms. There are some sophisticated sorts of blood tests that people have worked with, but as yet, none of those things have really panned out. They're not as crisp as you would like, and so as a consequence, you're left with this frustrating challenge with making a firm diagnosis in the setting of the standard bacterial infections that we use, for which we use standard antibiotics. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks for watching.